You've heard of heroic labs by now, and we keep talking about them because in today's mature market, you need every edge to be successful. Rather than spending those precious company dollars on building game tech, focus on building your game and shipping it. Get into your players' hands faster and grow your community. Heroic Labs is battle-tested partner and friend of the podcast. Their tech enables you to be flexible, creative, and scale for success. Heroic Labs has your tech stack covered. Whether you're looking for a world-class back-end game server, an amazing game development framework, fantastic live ops tooling, or reliable mass scalability, Heroic Labs has solutions for all of these challenges. And it's not just us at Deconstructor of Fun praising Heroic Labs. The company works with some of the world's biggest publishers on many of the beloved games. Focus on your game, save a big chunk of cheese, and avoid tech risks with Heroic Labs.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode. This Week in Games 300 milestone for us. We are going to touch on one little thing of news, but we're really going to celebrate all of our favorite moments from the past 300 episodes, going back into the Wayback Machine, storytelling. We might even go off on tangents. Most likely we will. So let's get right to it. I'm Jen Donahoe, strategic marketing consultant at Beta Hat and Jade Inferno. And today we have Philip Black, game economist at Game Economist Consulting.
Let's cook.
I don't even get that one, but all right, fine. Well, that's your catchphrase. Eric Kress, principal at Gossamer Consulting Group.
What's up, punks?
Mishka Katkov, founder of Deconstructor of Fun, Twig 1 alumni.
Hola, ¿qué tal? I'm back in Spain.
And Ethan Levy. I am
Hello.
so excited. You are my origin story onto the pod, so I'm glad that you're here so I can thank you directly a little bit later.
I've been crunching like crazy for 2 months and just hit a major milestone on Monday. So episode 300, had to come back for it. Had to play hooky from work. I need to stop working so fucking hard.
We got Ethan back because we thought this is the Greek episode. We're going to do the Sparta version. So everybody just do face plates because like 300. Right?
Yeah, let me find my war paint.
Yeah, all your abs. This is the 300.
What I have is not technically referred to as abdominal muscles.
It's okay. It's okay. CGI.
All right. Well, unfortunately, Laura's on a plane and Adams can't be here. We'll see if maybe we can get like a little clip from them. I do have a Laura origin story that I'll work in a little bit later. Maybe one of you can tell an Adam origin story. So it is the 5 of us today. Let me just start with a very quick shill because I just need to give a huge thanks to Ed Zobrist and his class for having me guest lecture at his USC Advanced Games business class this week. I get to be a guest Yoda and show up in front of a bunch of students and have them think that I have smart things to say, which is questionable, of course. So for those who don't know Ed, he's just like a wealth of stories. He was a huge marketing and publishing career in games and also in the toy industry. We actually have a similar background. So he was the head of publishing who launched Fortnite. So his story times on launching Fortnite and working at Epic at that moment in time is fascinating. He said he will unfortunately never come on a podcast and tell those stories publicly. So come to LA and let's have dinner. He's still kind of really in touch with all of this marketing stuff. We geeked out in front of the class about how modern marketing has evolved from just doing the big bang marketing. He's kind of like one of those folks who believes in that influencer community marketing. Even that's how they launched Fortnite. So really fascinating there. In any event, I want to do a little public service announcement and ask the audience a favor. For those experienced industry folks, really consider doing some pro bono or Yoda time with the next generation of game makers. Go guest lecture at a university, mentor someone. I'm paying it forward by doing these kinds of things because somebody helped me get started and breaking into the industry is tough, everyone. Second, it's really good to get their perspectives. They are viewing the game industry in a really different way. And so you can learn a lot. So it ends up being really mutually beneficial. Take the Yoda challenge. Let me know how it goes.
I was just at San Jose State a few weeks ago and did a presentation on the mobile market. And it is really fun to talk to a young group of people that surprisingly had very little experience with games in general, as a group, but some of them were really, really into it. So it's really cool.
Whether it was this class or a different one, I did a guest lecture a couple semesters ago when Paul Bellezza DOF superfan was teaching. I'm a USC alum, and so whenever anybody there asks me for a favor, I'm happy to.
Yes.
Go
I did
Trojans.
Paul's class as well. So Paul is busy now because he's the EP on League of Legends. So he is not doing his
poor guy.
It sounds
class.
like an easy job. That sounds like a fun, easy, stress-free job that anyone would be totally happy to take.
Well, I've done a couple of these like school things, and what I've noticed, especially when you go into the schools that have these sort of a game design programs, is that they're not really interested in the business side of games. They're more like, it almost feels like they're really into this indie path that they're being taught to. And so it's interesting and challenging to tell them about the business side of gaming, which is, pretty important.
Because I think we keep talking to the wrong audience. Like, I think we keep talking to like these game-specific schools, but like that's why I love the USC program. Like, I'd love if we talk to like our other disciplines outside of games, like just a marketing class.
Yeah.
You know, talk about games for marketing class, like what PMs could do in an economics class or an economy designer. Like, that'd be an amazing conversation. I'm on what Eric has kept mentioning, which is like broaden the audience, broaden the appeal.
Yeah, there is a Miggy, Marshall Interactive Games, something, I don't know. So maybe I'll loop you guys in. They're asking for guest speakers.
They pump PMs out. That school just like pumping PMs.
Exactly.
Like
right?
Zynga Jr. Like they just keep going.
Zynga trainees.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Chill. All right. So Phil, do you want to talk about this VGI chart? Is that you?
Let's wait till Adam is back. I mean, Spectre Divide just
it doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good.
Wait, hold on a minute. They weren't able to get any more users than that?
No, there's just no scale. So Mountaintop Games, just to set the stage a little bit, VC backing, going after CSGO. I think they've been cooking for a couple of years now. I don't know how much they've raised. I don't know, Eric, if you know off the top of your head what their lifetime raise.
We covered that.
A lot. By the way, I got a call from one of the VCs like after your expose. he was unhappy, to say the least. We talked about this on the podcast, how it's just not tracking at all, and now we're going to do it again. But like, give it some time, anyway.
So talking about the VCs, it's pretty easy to say who has invested into this. So it's one of these that has called you.
So on this chart, this is showing under 50K concurrence on Steam at launch as compared to over 200,000 for the finals.
I just threw on some games on here, the finals being one of them, Once Human and The First Descendant. So, wide variety of things. Interestingly enough, they all started with similar CCUs at around 200, 250. They've, of course, have declined since then. They're holding on to like some decent positions. Like The First Descendant's actually doing decently right now. Once Human has kind of been the story that I don't think there's been a lot of coverage of, but its decay curve hasn't been as extreme. It hangs around the top 30 right now. But Spectre Divide, just very low absolute number. And the trend line doesn't look that much better either. And I said, at least, I want to give this a little bit more time and check in on it. But they're not stacking DAU, and the trend line doesn't look anything spectacular. So not quite sure what to make of this one.
Is this an early access launch or is this a launch? I mean, not that they're in free to play, there's not much difference, I'd say, but how are they positioning this launch?
I don't know off the top of my head. That is an interesting question, though, that we can look up in real time.
While you're doing that.
I
know. Well, maybe we should stop beating up on this game then if we don't know.
It's a full launch. It's not early access.
Is it fun? Is it a fun game?
I think it has an interesting thesis, using the multiple characters in a tactical shooter that opens up what I thought this audience would be interested in, which is more tactical stuff, more strategy stuff. I think it's polished. The gunplay looks fine. I don't know if like these single X Factor games, which you see come out here and there, I don't know if it's enough. I'm not quite sure how to reconcile this with Valorant and really compare those theses yet. So I would say under construction.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you say that anything that comes out of Riot or Blizzard has an unfair advantage in terms of starting? That they have a built-in super fandom and audience and fans in the press, and they have every advantage that gives something like Valorant an incredible ability to launch that same game launched by an unknown new VC-backed studio with no PR. The exact same game would not have performed the same way if
but the finals isn't that great either. I mean, it's the same story too.
Right, but the finals invested heavily in, there was a lot of story and narrative, and they used their connections to get coverage.
And they had a publisher,
right? They built an audience.
They had a publisher.
You mean Nexon?
Yeah. At least they had someone.
So I guess that's,
backing them.
do you take this away as a marketing story though? Because the problem is the decay curve doesn't look that much better either.
I would say both. I was just saying for how to reconcile this with Valorant, like you can't compare anything launched out of Riot to anything launched out of somebody not Riot.
There's one thing that is launched out of Riot that doesn't seem to be working, and that is, according to Invest Game, they had the big article about ex-Riot teams, and those are the only ones that are apparently not, very successful when they enter the startup mode. They had this big article,
right? Because because they're used to launching their products with the Riot super fandom.
These are all exactly the same type of game where they are
tack shooters.
They're all shooters, but they're all independents, right? More or less, except for the finals. But we're not comparing this to Steam or to Valorant or something that comes from Valve or something like that.
All right. Well,
Oh, no. Once Human has NetEase behind them. So, of course, it makes sense why Once Human in the finals were able to get into 200,000s of concurrence. These are big publishers who know how to market free-to-play games.
That's what we're talking about.
Isn't the First Descendant in the same boat?
Yeah.
Who did First Descendant?
Yeah, Mountaintop raised $86 million, and they're backed by pretty big investors.
But they're
so it's not like this is like a startup out of your small garage.
This is a VC nightmare. Are we all talking on the same page here? Like every single fucking release from these VC backed companies is fucking a disaster of epic proportions.
Latest round of 30 million was in beginning of this year.
Okay, so here's what's really super interesting. The finals is self-published. So Once Human is NetEase, First Descendant is Nexon. These two companies know how to market free-to-play games on PC.
Regardless,
maybe we should ease off of Mountaintop. Let's give them time to I don't think we're critical of the game per se. I think we're critical of the investment.
Totally. I think the studio still nothing is written off yet. You got to see at least, take the temperature. It's a little cold.
Right. Yeah. Let's move on to something even more.
Yeah, let's keep going. So
insane.
Yesterday, EA had Investor Day, which was September 17th. The senior team all got up and gave presentations, full on, in-person presentations, a few highlights. They announced a modern day next level battlefield while kind of apologizing for two other really underperforming battlefields, community testing program coming out in early 25. They talked a lot about the Sims and how they're investing in the platform because basically there's no Sims 5 coming. There's also a movie in the works. Kress, you'll love that. They've been trying to make a movie about the Sims since I have been there. When Pat O'Brien used to go to LA all the time and try to get a movie. I was like, just stop. I agree. I don't know what a Sims movie is going to be. So on sports was really weird because they talked about this EA Sports app that was like this socially driven experience that was about predictive modeling that seemed to indicate if you haven't seen this, it was basically how are we going to go and help the betting market is kind of what that felt like.
Oh, wow.
And then finally, they said it was like an investor report where they said AI 2,000 times. So they talked about how AI is going to drive efficiency, expansion, and transformation. Kress, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I was dying to hear what you think about AI and why a strategy guy got up and talked. I haven't seen that before. A head of strategy is out there at an investor day. Go for it.
Oh my God. So I got a text from one of my buddies and he was like, hey, are you going to be watching the presentation today? And I'm like, why the fuck are you texting me this? And I'm like, oh my God, all he's trying to do is incite my wrath, right? Because I think he kind of understood what was happening at this meeting, right? So I watched it, and I'll be fucking honest. The first 3 or 4 speakers were fine. Laura Miele, Andrew, the sports guy was really good. I thought the last guy was a little bit fucking schmarmy and not very genuine, but whatever, right? He's a fucking executive at EA. What do you expect, right? And by the way, for those of you that are giving feedback,
I expect a strong vest game.
What?
Oh, like a Patagonia vest?
Sorry, call back to previous episodes. Strong,
all right, shut the fuck up, Ethan. All right. And by the way, for any of you guys that are out there giving feedback that I'm a little bit too mean these days or too aggressive, please fast forward 5 minutes, you fucking cupcakes. Okay, like just do it. Just do yourself a favor, okay? So anyway, I can accept almost any type of content from these type of events. My expectations are extremely low. Like, I'm not going to get any meaningful insights from what's happening out there. And for the most part, EA hit it, or slightly exceeded my low expectations. But I have to draw the line somewhere, right? For the record, the chief strategy officer, Mahir, is evidently a very nice guy, right? He has surrounded himself with a fucking legion of Ivy League douchebag consultants from Bain and McKinsey in his ivory tower in Toronto. He is clearly much smarter than I ever will be, and he's far more eloquent, no doubt, and has a much better BMI. But the audacity of this McKinsey fucking douchebag getting up there and trivializing game development with all his AI bullshit, this is still an art. It's still like interactive. It's still a developer-led type organization. And not to mention the whole pitch about his AI bullshit, the democratization of game development, doesn't make a lot of sense anyway. The notion that you could double your revenue and maintain margins with AI tools and UGC is just not necessarily true. The business model is not as sound, right? The margins are smaller, the costs of moderation, the quality control, all these things, like the technology investment, things that Roblox and Epic have been doing, it's fucking expensive. And all of his talk about this AI shit seems like it was created in some kind of strategy lab. This is like the 2015 project, like they have no idea what the fuck they are talking about is what the whole point here, right? But actually, regardless of that, like I can understand him getting up there and waxing poetic about bullshit around AI. Fine, right? He's a strategy guy. He's a McKinsey guy. He thinks highfalutin, right? But he has absolutely no credibility at all about talking about game development. Dude, the guy has been in the game industry for 4 fucking years. The rest of his experience is 10 years at McKinsey, Like, this is what's wrong with this industry, is that people like him are speaking out of turn, right? He has literally spent 10 years at McKinsey. He has absolutely no reason to do this. And then on top of that, he has a team of like 30 to 50 people that are creating game prototypes, right? All the games that were created in that presentation evidently is his team up in Toronto building this bullshit, right? And so like, how in the fuck did that happen, right? I don't get it. I don't understand how this is where we're at right now, right? I don't understand how Laura and Andrew or fucking Vince Impella or any of these like people that have been in the industry for decades could let this kind of thing happen in a presentation with this kind of reach. It doesn't make sense. EA has thousands of developers that are more qualified to talk about this bullshit, right? Dude, fucking the mailroom clerk has more experience in gaming than this guy. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't understand how they could think that this is okay. I'm sure like developers or EA are losing their goddamn minds listening to this guy talk. Sure. I mean, he has 15% body fat, high cheekbones. He's a handsome man, right? But geez, he's not the right guy to be talking about the future of game development. I mean, it doesn't make sense, So anyway, what I think is likely he's trying to get visibility, right? Clearly, he's trying to get in front of investors because he's on deck to be the next CEO. So help them God, Oof. Right? That's the only reason you put a strategy guy up there talking about game development. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. His ascension has been relatively quick. He started off as a VP. He's now like in the C-suite in 4 fucking years with no experience in gaming. I can't imagine that this gives him any credibility with studios. I think this is like a deterrent for him. Like, I think this is a super negative for him. They should have Vince up there or like anybody in this organization, the thousands of developers. But anyway, this is where we're at right now with the business, right? This little Slick Willie guy gets up there and starts talking bullshit about AI, which he doesn't know what he's talking about, I don't think. But anyway, all right, that's where I'm at with this. It's very, very frustrating. And you know what's funny is I listened to the whole thing and I'm like, hey, this isn't bad. What the fuck is he talking about? Like, and then all of a sudden he gets up there and starts talking AI. And I lost my shit. I couldn't even sleep last night.
Did this
I was
guy
so
piss in your cereal?
upset.
What the fuck?
No, it's just,
Jesus, man.
This is the
What
exact
is this guy
reason.
doing? He seems like a completely nice guy. Do you have a problem with his actual strategy? That's what I can't figure out. Maybe he's not the right guy saying it, but do you have a problem with what he said?
Oh, no, the whole AI thing is absolute bullshit. The UGC AI, like enabling. Yeah, no, I have a problem with that strategy.
Why is that
altogether.
bullshit? Like the broader framework was to monetize and really grow GDP around communities, which is how I saw that EA Sports app, which was weird. But that is a strategy, and the UGC stuff makes a ton of sense. I mean, The Sims, Battlefield, Skate, like they have a ton of franchises that could take advantage of this.
I don't think Skate is big enough to grow a meaningful UGC community.
Yeah.
Like UGC communities are around millions and millions of users, and Skate
They have some projects. They have some things ready to go. This makes sense. It's not out of nowhere.
No, but it's so fucking early, and they haven't done anything. And again, when like 30 or 50 like fucking McKinsey guys are up in Toronto fucking making prototypes for games, like what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, that's stupid. I mean, we can agree that one's dumb.
I mean, there's no development for the strategy group at EA. I mean,
Yeah, that seems
what
weird.
is going on?
What would you have them do instead, though?
No, actually, you made some good points, though. Actually, I read through your thing already. It's like, I think he's actually doing a good job on the strategy side to some degree, right? Except he's going after licenses that are completely dead, like Star Wars and Marvel. Right now, it doesn't seem like a smart move. I don't even know if that was part of his strategy because he's only been there for like a hot second, right? But like going after Battlefield, doubling down on sports, like, okay, I get it, right? Like those are pretty good. That's exactly what they should be doing.
Yeah.
But they should be building more teams and building more shit, right? That's what they should be doing. And instead, they're not really doing that, right? They're now going to rely upon UGC as their pipeline of content for these big franchises.
What shit do you want them to build? They got 4 studios on Battlefield Day now.
They should have a Sims 5, dude. Like it is like criminal that they have not created a Sims that takes advantage of all the online shit that's going on right now. Like it doesn't make sense. Like
Yeah.
it's,
Is Sims 4 not making enough revenue from its incredibly rabid and long-lived fan base that they're servicing for like a decade with
that is exactly the problem. They don't want to destroy their cash cow. I get that, right? But that doesn't change the fact that they're not monetizing that game the way it could be monetized.
Got it.
And that is like the future of the Sims, right? It's not taking old tech that the Sims 4 is based upon and then fucking locking on a UGC platform. I mean, how does that make sense? It's like the guy's a brilliant guy. I've heard nothing but good things about him, right? He's like a nice guy. He's someone you're going to do. He's like one of those EA execs though. Like if he likes you, then you're all good. But the minute that he doesn't need you, he's a perfect EA exec, right? Absolutely perfect EA exec, right? So it's like, fine. Like I get it. He's where he should be. But he should not be up there presenting about game development. That's all I'm saying.
That's a lot of projection. So not, I haven't watched this, but kind of listening to you, I understand what Eric is saying, because there is a core competence, a core value, a core service that EA delivers, and that isn't apps. It's not AI tools. It's not UGC. It's their key franchises that they are not maybe delivering against all of them as well as they need to. I mean, Battlefield is not quite where it used to be. There's no new Sims, et cetera, et cetera. Like I understand the outrage from Mr. Kress that they're kind of talking about these things, that apps, like everybody knows about apps. Now they're kind of like almost bringing it closer to DraftKings and through that almost like steering away the attention from the fact that they are not growing their key franchises. They're not bringing the audience there, that they're doing something that everybody else, like they're part of this AI growth. That feels ingenuous, and that's the problem. But at the same time, if you're working at EA and you have to show something exciting for the market, and you're trying to, you're picking your finger, seeing where the wind blows, you're like, AI, we need to be on AI, we need to be on apps, we need to be on UGC. So of course they're going to talk about it, and then they bring the person who probably it was his idea to bring this forward, and they give him the stage, and we'll see what's going to happen.
I would also argue, though, that mobile's been on his watch, right, for the last 4 years, partly, doing this, the worst acquisition in video game history, right, with Glue.
We could say that it's not necessarily worst acquisition. It could be worst post-acquisition integration in the history.
No, it was the dumbest, besides Zynga, it was the dumbest acquisition the worst timing possible for an acquisition. And anybody in the industry could have told you not to do that deal at that time. And I've talked to like numerous people that were looking at that deal. I would never fucking have done it at that time. But EA did it.
I'll just add to that it was also one of the worst post-acquisition integration then, because
yes, but that's on his watch. That is definitely on his watch.
Guys, just like Kate Blanchett participating in the Borderlands movie, this was COVID fever. You know, Glue acquisition, COVID fever.
No, Glue was
people stuck indoors. They have to acquire billion-dollar companies. It had to happen.
Let's not rehash that one. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the positive, Kumbaya, 300 episodes of Deconstructor of Fun, and everyone's joy.
To kick us off, Mishka. Can we do a little bit of story time? Twig origin, you started this whole thing. What's the story?
We can do the story. I wanted to just say one thing about this is regarding the Twig and Kress. This is something we talked about with Kress, I think last week. I'm now sadly doing a lot of events, sadly, because there's too many back to back, and people come to me and they say this one thing. This is one of the most common things. Yes, Jen is awesome. That's what I hear a lot. And then the second thing is, Eric is really nice in real life. And then so I told him about this, and Eric, you have to understand, I think Eric plays a character. Now, I don't think I know, because in real life, the other how many 100 hours a week, he's not this Twig Kress. He's a very nice person, and that's the only thing that I hear. And that's why it's so funny. I'm sorry to blow up your shtick, but that's one of the things behind the scenes is that Kress is super nice. And when people meet him, they kind of he's not the person on the Twig at all, but this is his outlet. So that's true. The secret behind the scenes.
All lies. All lies.
And regarding this secret, I have to tell this because we were talking about Glue, and I just remembered this funny story. So this is regarding if this is a story time. One of our mutual friend was sailing with the former CEO of Glue. This is post sale. The person is he's finished the game. He won. He's sailing in the bay of San Francisco with a mutual friend of ours, and I remember how the conversation led to it, by one thing or another. This mutual friend is also a friend of Kress, and then somehow he mentions the podcast or maybe DOF or whatever, and this person Nick at that point hasn't been working in games for maybe a year or 2 or 3. He's well forgotten. He's enjoying his life, and then he's oh yeah, fuck that Kress. Every time the Twig would cover Glue, the whole mood in the company would basically change. And he was still feeling this years passed after he sailed to the sunset. Literally, he was still butthurt by the comments. And I feel this is funny, but it creates this thing where it's not punching down. This is as punching up as you can have, because it's fun, to criticize constructively or less constructive, the most successful people in our industry. That's, it's not bad. They can cry about it on their sailboats.
That's right. All the way to the bank.
All right. Well, so I did a little bit of homework, and Twig number 1 was on July 17th of 2018. And it sounds like the first 12 of them were just JK and you, Mishka. And then Trust joins in at number 12 on October 10th, 2018. So maybe can you do the how did the pod start?
I'll tell the origin story, because I was the actual origin of this podcast. So what happened was JK and I met a while back, partially because of Mishka, I think, and we had a few dinners. He reached out to me randomly and said, "Hey, we should do a podcast together. I think we'd be really good at doing it." And I totally ghosted him. I didn't even respond. And I wasn't even that busy. It was a combination of I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. And then also I didn't really know how to respond. And I was a huge fan of podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts my whole career. So I think I did want to do it deep down, but anyway, I didn't respond. And so he ended up going off and finding Mishka and Deconstructor of Fun and doing it with Mishka. Oh. And so they launched the podcast, and I listened for the first 10 episodes or something like this, and I'm this is fucking terrible, right? It's fucking horrific, right? And I was on one. I started calling Joseph. I'm dude, Dude, this shit is really, really bad, dude. You got to get me on there. It can't be any worse, right? It can't be any worse. So let me on and let me do it. And then I joined on 12. That's how I remember the story.
Yeah, well, I can add a couple of details to that story. So the podcast started already in like 2016. That was the first one. So it was later published on Anchor. The first sort of a supporter of the podcast was actually Harri Manninen, who is the general partner and founding partner of Play Ventures. Because I moved to Finland and already had the podcast, and I was doing only interviews. There was no Twig. And back at that time, we met for a lunch and so forth. And he was like, let me just pay for the studio and everything, just out of like nothing. And you can just interview people and have them on. And like back then we had Anil, Dasgupta, and so forth. So that was like the first series. And then JK, I got him to come in at RovioCon, which we talked about just before this thing. So he was working at NBC. So JK, Joseph Kim, and he came in to give a talk at RovioCon. And I knew him a little bit from before, and we kind of hang out. It was fun. And he did the podcast in that studio that Harri had funded. And after that, we were having lunch with him and his wife. And I was like, we should do like a weekly thing, because like these interviews are really difficult. You have to go to the studio, you have to prepare, you got to get the approval, all that stuff. And we should do something like super simple, which is like, let's just talk about news, because we read the news and we talk about the news. So let's just record that. And that was like the idea of a simple, repeatable content that kind of keeps the podcast going between these interviews that were kind of hard to build and so forth. And of course, like everything is supercharged by the people. Our first episodes were horrendous. Like, I don't even understand. Like, I applaud people and then feel ashamed and sorry for people listening to that garbage.
I actually went back and I was trying to listen to some of them.
Oh my God.
Let's just say that I got like a few minutes in and I was like, oh,
yeah.
But Kress, like, I particularly wanted to hear what you were like on your first podcast. It was really fascinating. It was about who should buy Zynga. It was pretty funny because no one said Take-Two in any of that. You guys were like, it's EA or Ubisoft and one of them. But it wasn't grumpy old man Kress. It was, I'm presenting Kress. So it was interesting to hear like your off-air side of you on air. I was like, oh, wow.
There's no fun in that. There's no.
The heel wasn't born yet.
The heel was not born yet. That is true.
And I do remember very specifically. I mean, I think the first 50 or 75 episodes, the quality level was so fucking low. Mm-hmm. And anybody who does or wants to start a podcast, like, that is absolutely critical. It's like you gotta get the quality, you gotta get the mics, you gotta get the right recording equipment. And we really, really struggled with that first. I don't know. I don't even know if it went up to 100 episodes, but I think we got it kind of locked down now.
Yeah, and then the second part that is really important, like, by no means this is a place where I or somebody else is like telling how to run podcasts. It's not but I would just say this, like, the whole thing, Jen, when you said you listened to Kress in the beginning and he was a smart Kress, he was a word Kress, like the Kress outside this 1 hour of Twig. So that Kress did not resonate as well, and the topics did not resonate as well. And it's crazy that you kind of have to be a little bit divisive to kind of, get people to tune in. And so that's always been the double-edged sword of being on this podcast, because there is a certain element of shit talking, if you will, punching up, if you will. Like, even when we're talking about startups, it's a startup that raised $86 million. We are allowed to, it's not like your mom and pop who raised like, $500,000 or are struggling. Like, these are successful, excellent developers. Anyway, so that is the kind of a part that is kind of like the double-edged sword of this so-called media, is you kind of have to press some buttons to be heard.
Yeah. So at the USC thing on Monday, Ed made the class listen to some podcasts, and actually many of them were watching the YouTube. It was pretty funny. And so I asked them, like, what's your feedback? What do you like? And they're like, we like when you guys fight. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And number two was, they said that they like all of the different perspectives that each of us bring across the different disciplines, and how we go about disagreeing and resolving was really interesting to people. So yes, I agree. Like, having a little conflict isn't a bad thing, because it's what happens in real life, right? Like when we're in these work meetings.
Yeah. Conflict draws people.
Yeah. Okay. Let me do a little bit of podcast by the numbers and take a look at how we've done after all this time. So 2 million all-time plays. 40% of people listen on Apple Podcast.
2 million. This, I believe, makes us the biggest games industry podcast around, as far as we know.
I don't think so. No, it's like the biggest game industry podcasts are those who are connecting with consumers. And clearly our podcast doesn't.
Game industry insider.
Yeah.
Sorry. In terms of what our niche is, which is games industry people talking to
the
games.
business
biggest
of video
fish in
games.
the smallest pond, maybe.
Yeah, that's where I'm comfortable.
Yeah. Well, okay, then in that sense. But in terms of game industry podcasts, like game industry podcasts are really big. Like when we're talking about like people who make podcasts about WoW and some other
B2C.
top titles. Yeah, B2C.
Yeah.
Those are.
I'm talking B2B.
Yeah.
In the world of B2B game
Yes.
industry.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe who cares?
Oh, but what other ones are there? Game Industry.biz? They're kind of a combination.
Most
Navic.
publications have. Navic has.
PocketGamer.biz,
Yep, correct.
Yeah,
Uptick's got one.
The 2.5
2.5
gamers.
Gamer.
2.5. Yeah.
There's actually a
Game
lot
Economist
more.
Cast.
Yeah.
Game
Game
Economist.
Economist Cast.
Yeah, what a
All right.
titan in the industry.
Sophie's podcast.
It's the best game economy podcast in the world.
Yeah.
Number one.
I'm
Number
coming
one.
for you. I'm gonna come for you, Phil. I'm gonna start a rival just for fun. The
Yeah.
No Economists Allowed Game Economy podcast. Be amazing.
So I also took a look at how people are listening. 30% listen when walking the dog, 30% at the gym, and 40% on the toilet. So the top 6 countries, 37% US, UK 9%, Canada 6%, who we all pissed off a few episodes ago when we ripped on Tim Hortons. And Adam is now representing for Canada, so I'm sure that number's going up. Finland 5%, Mishka has home field advantage, Germany 4%, Sweden 4%, because they all want to hear how Philip's cats are doing because they can see him from the window.
Per capita adjustment, we're number 1-ish.
Yeah.
Okay, that's some game economist math bullshit right there.
Yes.
And so demographically, this is only the Spotify users, 80-20 male to female, no surprise there. 7% no specified or non-binary, which was kind of interesting. Mostly a little bit 30 and up is our audience. Mishka, we need to craft a strategy to get those Gen Zers, the next generation of gamers.
They don't work.
I remember when it was really great to have you on and Laura on. And there was like a concerted effort, at least from my part, to get female voices on the podcast. And that also came in from the same source that the name Twig actually came. And that source is my wife. So she came up actually with the name of the show, but also the whole like female voice. I didn't particularly think about it, but then I was listening to this bullshit podcast about finances and economics and so forth, as clearly by my delusional stuff that I talk about. But one of them was like me trying to get her to listen to this like really interesting episode on this finance podcast. And she was like, I'm not about to listen to dudes talk about money. And then like a light bulb went up my head because I was like thinking like, how don't we get female listeners? Like, what's going on? And then it was pretty clear that we're too male dominant on this front. So it's been absolutely great not only to have your voices and your expertise, but I think it's incredibly important for any podcast to have, male and female.
Yeah, diversification. Speakers. Yeah, and I think that's what's great. And I credit Ethan a lot. When Seifert was leaving and the marketing chair was open, Ethan was kind of like lead recruiter for that. Hopefully Moneyball, he's got some stats in the background. But I know that you specifically were targeting females in the game industry, and I really, really appreciated that.
Yeah, because Seifert was leaving. I knew that I was going to have to dial back my time. And I thought it was a great opportunity to even the odds, appeal to a wider audience. And I don't know, just if you don't do it intentionally, it's not going to happen, right? Isn't that part of the DEI allyship mental framework, right? So you have to make a conscious choice and then make it happen. And we had a lot of great voices that tried out and were interested, and no shade on the other people who came on and guested for a couple weeks, but Jen was a great fit.
Yeah, from the jump. Kind of like Phil.
Yeah.
To be clear here, I think Jen has been an amazing addition for the podcast, regardless of her gender. Okay, because
exactly.
Fact, she's really good at what she does. She's an OG. She's done both console and PC and mobile experience. Like, she's not afraid to express her opinions, which is like the hardest thing to do. And she has integrity. And most importantly, she gets shit done, right? So she's like the taskmaster, right? She's like something we need because we're all a bunch of fucking nincompoops. I actually feel if you're not part of that. So anyway, she's really good at what she does, and it's not because of her gender, just to be clear.
I think that's a great point to make, kind of in the framework of recruiting, because there was no lowering of standards. In fact, if you compare Jen to me, I'd say a raising of standards, right?
Oh,
but it's more of making,
without a doubt. Dude, that's like the biggest understatement of the fucking planet, right?
Yeah.
That's understatement of the podcast right there.
So you raise your standards and you make a conscious choice. And for me, whose network is primarily male, it has to be a conscious choice in order to overcome the inherent bias of me only DMing people I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. And thank you, Ethan, for making the conscious choice. I do think your voice, I miss what you bring, because you bring this historical perspective of games. And correct me every time I get some like 20-year-old story wrong about a game I played. You're like, actually, the real origin for that. So please don't discount yourself.
But he's actually the only game developer on the podcast.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
I mean, when it comes down to it, right? Like, he's actually making games. Like, sorry, Mishka, but like, you know.
Yeah, no, I've stepped down. I got what, 14, 15 years in. I'm only helping. Like, I'm only consulting. I'm not in the trenches. I'm outside the trenches, long, far away in the bunker.
Yeah, we're just screaming from the cheap seats, up here.
That's true.
So thank you.
I'm
thank
going
you,
after
Ethan.
Warren Spector's record.
Yeah.
He's not retired yet, but whenever he retires, I want to beat him in terms of number of years in the trenches.
You can do it.
Games.
You got this.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla, the premier partner for game developers seeking to expand their reach and revenue. Xsolla provides a robust suite of tools designed to enhance user acquisition, manage subscriptions, and streamline payment solutions worldwide. Unlock new markets and maximize profitability through their customized, secure payment architecture and dedicated support team. Xsolla, powering game developers to achieve global success.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they'll interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit to the top 10 things we got right. Oh my God.
Not everyone all at once. Calm down. Hold your horses.
The list is really short because it's...
Wow, are we looking at the same document? There's like a novel here.
I know. There's a lot to get through, but I actually
Act 1,
went in...
Part 1.
I asked the community what they wanted to hear from us, because one of the comments was that we shit on anything new. We often have a little bit of a negative perspective. So what did we talk about that we got right? Who wants to go first?
First of all, Google Stadia, the dumbest idea in video games. Apple Arcade, the second dumbest idea in video games. MOBAs, the worst genre for mobile in the game industry. Embracer, calling out the Ponzi scheme that is Embracer. Some people were just so on the hook on this thing, and like ultimately it didn't make sense. And Stillfront is on this list as well. Blue Mobile, another great call. They ultimately got acquired for an insane amount of money by an insane company that doesn't know how to retain talent to save their lives. That was a disaster. IDFA. We were right about IDFA. I look, it had a huge impact on the industry for 2 fucking years. It destroyed the industry. Apple destroyed their own industry. And people like Matei were out there basically saying, oh, well, we'll be fine. We'll figure it out, right? Yeah, 2 years later, we're figuring it out, right? But no, ultimately, IDFA completely changed the landscape on gaming and had made all the publishers adjust. And fucking Apple doesn't give a shit about us at all, right? Microsoft, while I was ultimately wrong about the transaction closing, we were right collectively about the fact that they are up shit's creek right now with their failed strategy for subscriptions, and they're reverting back, and they're in big trouble right now because they're losing the generations, self-admitted. So anyway, I thought we were right about the commentary around that, but not ultimately right about that. So that's all I got
Do you ever believe in anything? You know, everything is like a negative forecast here. Have you ever believed in anything? Jimmy won't score 20 points in today's basketball game. Is that how you form your forecasts?
No, I do believe in a lot of things. I believe in the console will continue to be a huge industry for this space. I believe that the big franchises like Battlefield, Call of Duty, and FIFA will still generate significant amounts of returns. I believe that there are certain genres in mobile that actually work, and there's many genres that don't.
You got to shoot some threes. This is all layup stuff.
No, I'll give an example of Kress being a believer even before Twig. So we were at this event in Battery in San Francisco. You remember that, Kress? Like a long time ago. I used to live in San Francisco. I was on some weird panel. You were at the same event. And then afterwards, you wanted to talk about Zynga. And I was working at Zynga. And you were so bullish at Zynga. Oh, yeah. And the stock was maybe like under $2. Like, I was like, this guy is on crack. And he believed in Zynga. And I was like, I'm at Zynga. I know what's going on in Zynga. And you think this company is worth like multiple times what it is? I was wrong. He was right, even though I was inside and he was outside. So
I believe in Frank DeVoe's vision, right? Growth through acquisition and buying companies that are actually making money in mobile, right? That are actually making games that make money in mobile. So I definitely believe in that.
So that's an example of just like you believing in something, even when people around you are like, insiders are telling you like, dude, you're wrong. It's like, nope, I'm right on this. And you wrote it. And the company sold at 12. Like it was plus 6x from the point when you said you believe in it. And I was like, you're insane.
Since Kress's list of top 10 was only 7, I wanted to add a couple others. I'm going to give you 2 more wins, and then I'm going to give myself 1 win to pump my bag. So I'm going to give you the win on crypto, right? Your message on crypto was unwavering and correct.
What was that message, Ethan? Just to clarify.
Mr. Tokenomics.
I think he might have said scam. He might have said crypto is a scam for no users. Something along those lines. Totally correct. Kress, I think you also called skills and every gaming SPAC that I invested in being a complete disaster correctly.
The skills call was really good, actually. That was that and the Cyberpunk. I forgot the Cyberpunk thing. Cyberpunk was like probably my best short call of my career.
And since all of these are about predicting impending disasters, I had one thing that came to mind of an impending success, which was calling out Monster Hunter Now, which was the Niantic game in their post-Pokemon Go era. Most of their IPs, we rightly said, are just poor matches when they came up. This was the one where we said, this is a great match. This IP makes sense. And they just hit 225 million in their first year because the IP is a match. The IP in its fundamental fantasy is a match for location-based gaming. So we got that one right. And we're believers in a game. We believed in one game.
No, Kress was always strong on Match Factory when that launched. It's one of, when we get to corrections, it's one that, because as a user, I don't like time pressure games. I was like, ooh, and they hadn't built out the meta when we were evaluating it in soft launch. But Kress, you were like, wait, I think the RPD is looking good. So you were bullish on Match Factory. Actually, let's get into the top corrections. So here's things we got wrong. I pulled a couple just in listening to you guys. And people have always messaged me to be like, Kress was wrong on the ABK Microsoft acquisition.
Right. I mean, the fundamental call was the UK or the European Union would block it because it's too big and they're going against tech, and dragged on for quite a long time and longer than anybody imagined, even the guys at Goldman. Right. But ultimately they caved. Right. And that was not expected. I just want to be clear that there's 2 parts to this. One is that whether this deal closes and whether it's good for the industry. And I think I'm being proven right as we speak that this is a really, 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 really bad deal for the industry as a whole, right? I will concede that I got it wrong, that it would not close, but I am not conceding that this is a really, really terrible deal for the industry. And it's almost at a point where they got to spin this thing out before they destroy it, right? If they don't spin it out, in a few years, this thing is going to just be decimated.
A shadow of its former self.
That's what I wanted to say. It's going to be a shadow of its former self if they don't spin it out quickly, because we're already seeing evidence of that as well. To get profitable, they're just cutting. And so anyway, but I will concede that I got that wrong. I was, the UK regulators basically caved.
Staying on you for a second, what was your other one? AppLovin?
Oh yeah, AppLovin. So I got this one wrong, where I was hearing from many, many sources, and Apple themselves, is that they were going to block fingerprinting, which should have been the death knell of user acquisition in the space. And so that would mean that AppLovin would just continue to get crushed, right? But what happened is that Apple backed off fingerprinting because they knew they would impact the ecosystem far greater than just the user acquisition and Facebook and AppLovin, I think, and they are allowing fingerprinting. And Adam at AppLovin is a fucking gangster, and he just doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on fingerprinting and building out Macs, and that's made the stock $120 today, right? So I was wrong from when it got down to $10, the stock, all the way up to 30, so it tripled. But then I came on board that AppLovin was going to rule the roost, and the stock is now at like 110 or something, 120.
Phil, give me some of yours.
No, boy. Squad Busters is just a big fat owl all around.
I had to jump on this.
No.
I was there too. I was there on that one too. That's.
I was even gonna I was gonna get one of Squad Busters tattoo, be like that Microsoft guy who got the Xbox one. The game had problems. I thought the one thing it would be able to do would bring everyone to the yard with all the IP. They brought all the IP to the yard. Maybe they could bring all the players to the yard. It was supposed to be its strength. It turns out it looks like it's one of its weaknesses. It did not reach historic download volume. The game always had problems, but I thought the IP would bring people. I've really adjusted my priors after Squad Busters on the strength of mobile first IP to really do anything significant. It just feels like there's a lot of bodies there. Yeah. There are some winners. Like Rovio, to its credit, I think built an IP that was mobile first and has done something with it, but it doesn't seem like the ceiling is that high. And again, a lot of those planes have been shot.
I don't think the IP is the problem with that game, my friends. I think the game is the problem with the game.
I mean, it got very flimsy downloads at launch. It was not able to sustain. I mean, in the last 30 days, Heyday has done more downloads than Squad Busters. This is a striking indictment.
Because no one's playing that game well, okay. Well, we can have a whole fight about. We should do an episode on going back and looking at Squad Busters marketing and product, because I think there's a lot there.
I have to say, like, for me, why I jumped in on this bandwagon with Phil was, the game felt good in the beginning, problems, etc. But I'm very impressed by the talent that Supercell has working there. Super good people. And when they are skipping soft launch, I was like, they must see some monster numbers. Like, they must be looking at numbers they've never seen before. And so that was and now I'm worried of like, how do they even make a call like this? Like, now it even sounds crazier. So now I'm like skeptical about Supercell decisions after having this call wrong. So that was why I jumped on this. So yeah.
The other big fat L is Farlight 84. I really thought this thing was going to have some legs. I mean, this thing was rumored forever.
I remember shooters on mobile.
Joseph Kim was studying this game. I remember Lilith is a fantastic studio. How did it go so wrong with that game? And I mean, I think really when you start to look at it, you can start to see, oh man, mobile shooters maybe aren't the genre that we thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm throwing one into the mix. I've got two for myself and one I'm kind of throwing on you guys. You know from my DMs that since I am mostly not on the podcast, I feel like anime and gacha games don't get their due.
I'm trying,
and
man.
I remember the week Honkai Star Rail came out, you guys like didn't cover it or didn't even talk about, or maybe like brought it up and we're like, what is this game even? And then it did $100 million in its first month and has clearly, joined the $1 billion club. And so I just want to say, like, kind of missing the boat on Honkai Star Rail. And I would like to see more anime and gacha game coverage overall. And then my two massive L's, and I wouldn't even be here without them, which is funny. One, obviously I came in as the crypto kid, and I believe two things about crypto that to date I have gotten completely and totally wrong. And they were fundamental to why I believed in it for about 2 years. So one thing I believed was that the free-to-play whales that I have spent my career servicing, fulfilling their needs through gameplay and giving them hundreds of millions of dollars of things to buy, I thought that crypto was going to solve an unfulfilled need for them, that they were spending all this money on things they don't own. Turns out they don't care. Ownership was not a value add for them. And the second thing that I believed, I know plenty of our listeners are still working on crypto. And so maybe this will be true in 10 years, but to date, crypto has not gotten any easier for normies to use. I sold like my last couple NFTs a couple weeks ago or months ago, and I was like, man, fucking COVID fever, this shit makes no sense. Like, what am I even doing here? Why am I putting in all this work to try and get $50 out of a system that is just like trying to steal from me and confuse? Like, why did I think this would replace banking? That convenient, easy to use thing where I can go to a machine on the corner of any street and get money out and trust it. Like, I thought it would get easier over time. To date, I have not personally encountered a single use of crypto that was easier than it was in, I don't know, whenever I started talking crypto. So 2 massive losses. Thank you for letting me continue to comment on the industry despite the whole premise of why I'm here being
that
wrong.
tokenomics episode was like one of the most listened to podcasts of all time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's still number 2, isn't it?
Yeah.
I still have do I have the number 1 or number 2 most listened to?
You have the number 2, but overall, like, it's number 1 because of the YouTube traffic. It was I think it was Crypto for Dummies or token, like what?
Yeah, Power of Marketing, dude. You gave that the perfect title.
Yeah,
right?
at the perfect
It was like
time.
Blockchain Gaming for Dummies. Fucking
Blockchain Gaming for Dummies. Yes, that's true. That's true. It's clickbait number 1. So
right title, right time.
What do you end up thinking of bananas on Steam? We haven't gotten your take on this since it's emerged.
I actually did not pay enough attention to bananas.
He's
to
allergic to crypto right now, so let's just not talk about it. He's gonna get a rash if he starts.
Like I thought crypto wasn't allowed on Steam, so I don't know what the crypto integration is. I can't comment. I'd have to research.
Mishka, you're absent from this list of corrections. Is it because there's too many and you couldn't pick one?
No, I mean, I get stuff constantly wrong. Like the one that I remember right now is definitely Squad Busters. What else would be like that type of a big thing?
Dawn of Titans marks the end of natural motion. Well, that was an historic DOF article. Remember that had to be taken down? Oh, that was incredible.
Oh,
that went around at Scopely. I remember everyone was talking about that.
God.
Slack groups were breaking out.
Oh my God, fuck yeah! Like back in the days, I was much more wild. I was like a wild Kress. Maybe when I get like a little bit more experience, I'll go Kress mode like on my last 5 years in the industry, and then I'll also open up. But yeah, that was a hot piece for sure back in the days. There's a lot of things that I regret. Let's put it this way. There's a lot of things that I regret. I wish that I wouldn't talk so much about economics. I need to stop listening and reading fucking Economist, Financial Times, Bloomberg, and all these. But then Google algorithm just pushes every evening as I go to bed. I'm
don't
like,
worry. We'll get you some protein.
Like, what? And so I get like bamboozled to these like macroeconomic stuff, and I can't stop. And then Kress yells at me, and I'm like trying to be like, you got to get rid of this fucking bullshit. So that I regret. I regret talking so much about macroeconomics, and I know the problem, and I blame Google's algorithm for it. So
someone on Play Ventures said we should call it Michiganomics. Should be a new section.
Yeah, that's
feedback too. It's like, dude, you got to get Mishka stop talking about this shit, dude. It doesn't make any sense.
I fully agree. 100% regret, and I'm trying to get out. So now my feed. By the way, my feed is like more and more about running shoes because I like looked at a couple of things, and I bought some, and now Google is just killing me. Like, ask me about the latest Brooks or Essex or Saucony model, and I will know it because every evening they're like, "You going to bed, boy? Let me tell you about these new fucking shoes that Brooks just released." It was like, what the fuck? I got all of them, so gladly that doesn't intersect with Twig.
Let's move on from the Saucony shoes.
Saucony,
so this is the newbie
shoes.
corner part. What is your surprised you the most about coming on to the podcast?
I'll be a little bit quick because we covered some of this. So I'm actually still the rookie. Thank you for not hazing me, I guess. I joined in Twig 230 in May of 2023. So like a year and a half ago, we told the story about, again, Ethan, thank you. Oh my God. But what was really funny, let me just give you a little behind the scenes on how the pod comes together, which is Ethan's like, Jen, it's kind of like a bunch of drunk college folks who just happen to get on a pod and start talking about stuff. So there actually is kind of a script. We have this like Dropbox paper. I was like, what's Dropbox paper? So it's the way that we kind of organize everything. There is no meeting, there's no pre-meeting. Everything is done asynchronously. And so it's, hey, go out, find a news topic that you think you want to talk about, put it in this document, write your take, and then other people are going to go in async and kind of like write what they're going to say. And then sometimes, so we actually do script out each one of the twigs and we put a little bit of organization to it. And then we riff on things, especially when each other says something crazy. But what surprised me, I think, was I was expecting to have a lot of challenges, like arguing with Kress, because Kress often hates on marketing. And when I got on, Kress actually reached out to me offline. He's like, hey, let's do a chat and a catch up. You are so ungodly nice and smart and welcoming. And I was shocked. I was shocked.
No.
I love hanging out with
Still
you.
a jerk to me.
Yeah.
That was like pretty surprising to me, to be honest. So Laura isn't here, but her quick story was, I guess you guys ran into her we do this annual Istanbul Google Deconstructor Fun Think Games Istanbul Summit, and she just invited herself on the podcast and she just joined. Was that
Not
the story?
True. No. I talked to her. She was really like kind of a little bit sarcastic and pithy, and like I thought, and she kind of knew gaming and she knew product, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Like she'd be great on the podcast, and so we invited her on, and she invited herself to the Istanbul event dinner, right? She was not even part of the crew, and she totally like finagled her way. And
well, she didn't. Laura is really nice. I was there. I think Maya, Hoffrey, some other ones. I was like, come on, like, because she was at the same hotel with us, and we were all going to this post-event dinner, which was pretty big. I think.
But she wasn't invited to.
She wasn't invited, but we smuggled her in. We were like,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
you just come in and just walk in and just take a seat. She was like, no. It's like, no, you just walk in and behave like you belong here. And so she sat next to Kress, and that was it.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. Phil,
Yeah.
I don't think I got your story.
I think Eric, well, first of all, it's surreal to be on this cast. I remember at Scopely, everyone was gabbing about the latest Twig. It was always like an undertone in meetings about what the hosts said last week, what they got wrong. For my survival story, I followed Eric Seifert on Twitter. And I think he had posted he was leaving or they were looking for hosts. And I sent him a DM, and we had some friendly DM exchanges beforehand. And he's like, all right. And then I had to have an interview with Eric Kress. And I was like, oh, this will be interesting. And I was like, all right, what can I disagree with him about? Because I knew if he could get him going a little bit, if you could see combat with him and survive some bullets, you might have a shot at surviving the war. And so I forget what we disagreed about when we talked to each other.
It was like the dirtiness of
loot boxes, predatory loot boxes.
Predatory loot boxes.
Oh.
I was getting an ethical defense of loot boxes. I still love to do that too.
Yeah.
You backed away from that debate. I've been raring to go for like 3 years on that.
I'm so steadfast in my opinion on this. It's becoming more and more apparent every time I do a presentation on it. So yeah, maybe we should have the debate.
That was a ton of fun. And then from there, I was off to the races. But like Eric, I've grown up listening to podcasts like Games for Windows. Do you remember that crew? Sean Elliott. I mean, that was an amazing crew. The comedy button ended up getting spun off of this. Just listen to Econ Talk. Like they've been a really important part of my life. And it's been surreal to be on one. They are everything that you imagine them to be. It's like this weird talk show that you're on that's kind of in your living room, but there's also like behind the curtain, thousands of people that are listening. And sometimes you might forget that they exist, but they will rear their head when you get something wrong. Or you talk about something and you don't understand it like they do. And so you end up getting a lot of factual corrections, or you missed this, or you didn't cover this right. The other thing you'll get DMs about is like a dirty laundry sometimes about like, there's all this drama with this person and that person, and they go way back. And you end up learning a lot you shouldn't learn about the games industry. The best part that about being on the show is that you have to form a model of games, how the game industry works. You have to consume all this news and really update your prior understanding of the world. Like Squadbusters failed. What are you going to take away from that? We were just talking about Spectre Divide. Inzoi we're looking at. The Sims seems to be doing well. Battlefield isn't doing well. Call of Duty is doing well. It's like you have to take all these different pieces of information, assess the strength of the evidence, and then kind of update your model going forward and hopefully be a better analyst. And that isn't something that is something you can do out of the box. You might think you might be able to do that out of the box, but every week, remember, you got to go on, you got to talk about it. So you can't just keep it in your head. You actually have to write it down. You have to think about it. And if you don't, someone else, one of these other co-hosts is going to eat you alive. if you come unarmed, you're not going to survive the encounter. So I think you got to do your homework.
Yeah, I want to second that. I mean, part of the reason I actually do the podcast is just to stay on top of what's actually happening on a real-time basis and actually trying to think about it. And then also getting people's opinion. Like if I don't really understand something, like why this douchebag chief strategy officer is out there talking about AI, I call someone and said, hey, what the fuck? Why is this guy up there talking about AI? He's like, I have no fucking idea why this guy is talking about AI. This doesn't make any sense. It's like keeping that dialogue going with all these different contacts and kind of keeping fresh about what's happening on the industry is really helpful for me to do the analyst stuff for the investors in particular. So
yeah, agree.
What was so funny to me about reading Phil's surprise about the dirty laundry and the number of DMs he gets, I get no DMs because my takes are fucking great.
You just gotta roll around the mud more.
Yeah, or great, or
sign.
people don't listen to them. Yeah, you need to ruffle some feathers.
I think I come historical and I take less critical stances. I don't stick my neck out as much, so I don't get as many DMs. But I do love teasing Phil. I do miss it, and you know it comes from a place of love, my friend. So the thing that surprised me most about joining Twig is actually not about Twig, but about the year or so I spent when Mishka was off mic where I was doing both tokenomics and running all the interviews. I was amazed, flabbergasted even, by how bad your PR people that you all hire in the listening audience are at pitching us to get on the pod.
That's true.
Like, seriously. And I'm sorry if you're listening and you've pitched me before and didn't get out. Like, they're really bad at pitching for coverage. A lot of them treat it like a volume business, which obviously it is. Their tone, nothing ruins my day more than getting an email from someone I've never met treating me like I work for them, right? That's what I hate, is like when there's this tone of entitlement about why their client that hired them absolutely deserves to be on my podcast and get access to my audience. Like, that's just weird. A lot of them show absolutely no knowledge of who the audience is or why they would be interested in the guest. They pitch credentials. They don't pitch story. And it's like, look, I can't, just because someone is X, Y, or Z doesn't mean they have a story to tell that is worth an hour of my time, let alone the community's time. And the last one is like, when you push back on PR and be like, hey, this isn't a story, pitch me a story, ghosted. Like, they just go, right? They're just checking a box by emailing every creator, it feels like. So I wanted to bring that up as my surprise, because if you are hiring a PR person whose job it is to get you coverage on websites and podcasts and videos, and you find that they are not successful, perhaps audit their communications, have them pitch you as they would pitch a creator, and find out if they have the goods. Because Mishka, I don't know if this is your experience, but like 95% instant trash bin.
I'll just say that, let's, since we're like throwing shade, I'll name one good one that just came out of mind. There are many good ones, but let's say Alfred London. That's a pretty good one for a PR agency. So if you're working with them, they've pitched us good guests. I think Sean Rutland, the co-CEO of Hutch, was the last one, but good guests from that one. They understand the audience, good interaction, good back and forth. Alfred London, I'll recommend them if you're trying to get on different podcasts. So that's one. Yeah. And 47 Communication is also pretty good. Not pretty good. They're good. Good comms service. That's a US-based one.
Oh, yeah. All right. So let's do quickly some biggest stories since Twig 200. So maybe a couple years ago. I wanted to talk about the Unity runtime fee fiasco, because it's really come full circle. So this was a really memorable time for me. Phil, you talked about having to we have to consume so much information, right? We have to read everything. Here is the first time that I felt like I was press. It's funny because sometimes now when I call my friends, they're like, Jen, is this off the record? And I'm like, wait, oh, you think I'm press? So it's so weird being a marketer and a PR and a comms person pitching all these things, and now kind of in this side of my job being on the other side of that. And so people have been reaching out like, hey, let me give you off the record information because I want you to talk about this on the podcast. And then, news was breaking like during the podcast, and we had to figure out how to talk about the Unity thing and how to explain all of the different fees. I built a calculator. And so a year later, and probably two CEOs later, they decided to cancel the runtime fee. and basically charge the rich, right? And increase the fee for the bigger companies. But Mishka, don't you have an interview coming up with Unity, like the CMO or something?
Yeah,
like,
well, I'm at a Unity event. The new CEO is here and so forth. So I'm right here. I just talked to the CMO as well about the runtime fee. Apparently, they were a little bit of a worried how the people are going to take it. I was like, that's a good news. They're going to take it well. So, but yes, currently at Unity event.
Hey, actually, I will say that I might be wrong about Bromberg, right? Like maybe he is exactly what they need right now because he's doing exactly what he should do at this point. My thing was that they need someone more touchy-feely and more like, kumbaya, bring people together. But no, like he basically just eliminated the fucking runtime fee, which is the problem to begin with. And then he's out there trying to fix the shit with the ad tech stuff. And so basically what he's saying is he's conceding that this fucking engine business is shit. It's never going to be profitable. It is what it is. They'll double down focus and try to make it as profitable as possible. But all their focus is on ad tech, and he's busting heads, and evidently it's coming together, and I think Unity's going to do really well next year. So there's my positive spin, Mr. Philip.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it.
I'll support Eric's point here. Again, I do this Unity event almost every year. And the last time we were doing this, I remember clearly, I was sitting next to Sufert. We're at the same event, and Riccatello was presenting at this event, and he did a presentation about metaverse, and it was kind of like interesting. Let's put it that way. However, you can talk about metaverse. But I remember clearly this. After the presentation ended, he ran away. Like somebody was holding his kids hostage. He had to go. Like he ran away from the stage. And then today, Matt Bromberg was giving the opening speech at this event here. And the whole approach was very different. It was more about like, you are our key partner. So this is a little bit of a smaller event. A lot of top studios are here. It's like, you're our key partners. We'll listen to you, et cetera, et cetera. And he stayed here interacting with the key clients.
The people,
the clients, the companies that pay the bill. They're all here listening to what they need and so forth. So that's at least the change you can see already happening. Of course, Unity back at that time was $200 a stock. And there's a rush to close a lot of deals and expand the metaverse. And today it's more about Unity's chasing profitability. It's a whole different ballgame and a different CEO for that. And at least my first take is a very positive and bullish in that sense.
All right. Phil, what's your story?
It's got to be Monopoly Go. It's first of all, it's one of the things we got right, or at least I got right on that one. I took a swing on that one.
I got it. You know what? You're making me realize. Massive L for me. I said there was no way they would overtake Coinbusters.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I was wrong.
That's a safe bet, though, honestly. Like, no one would have imagined that it would has gotten as big as that.
I said that. Just to be clear.
Did you?
Oh, I said that just to be clear.
Really? You got it right.
I said it would best Coinmaster without little hesitation. And I think just how much money this game has made in such a short period of time, it's almost just gone over people's heads. I mean, it completely changes almost every analysis you do. It repaints Social Casino. Social Casino looks like a down arrow. It's an up arrow now, which breaks so many narratives about this shift to the middle.
No. See, that's the wrong takeaway, Phil. That really is the wrong takeaway, because you talk to anybody in Social Casino land, they're not fucking dancing on ceilings or whatever the expression is, based upon Monopoly Go's performance. Dude, they're in the shit right now. Dude, Playtika is like an all-time fucking low. They're trading at like 5 times earnings, dude. It's like,
that's your takeaway.
Dude,
that's not the takeaway I take from that. I'm saying it is a social casino game and it's done well.
It's not a social casino game. See, this is your problem. Is like, you define it as a social casino game, you're going to lead people to the wrong trough, dude. That's not the right thing. It's a casual game that has social casino elements. And if you want to build that, sure. If you want to build a fucking slots game or a poker game or a bingo game, you're an idiot. Okay, you don't do that in this market.
You roll dice. That's a big go button. It could not be a closer icon of a slots game.
And it's also the most predatory monetization game out there,
exactly. Right? I mean, to your own point.
Whoa,
slots.
He said it.
It's slots. To your point, though, like if you consider that type of monetization predatory, yeah, it completely fits the bill. But regardless of how we classify it, social casino or not, it's made a shit ton of money, like a gobsmacking amount of money in a very short period of time. And I don't know if the wake yet has really reached everyone. Where are the fast follows? Where are the changes in genre approach? You look at a game on HD that does really, really well, there'll be like a million fast follows. I mean, we were just talking about Spectre Divide, which is now the third entry into tactical shooters beyond Valorant in a major way. Like, we're the ones that are going to go after Monopoly Go. what does Monopoly Go mean yet? I don't know if we've really absorbed that yet.
I think you and I are actually saying the same thing, but I'm just being a dick. But like at the end of the day, the casual gameplay, deep monetization design seems to be the formula that's winning. Yep. And Monopoly Go is a perfect example of that, where they took a casino style game and they made it super casual and fun and engaging for a mass market audience, and has deep predatory monetization practices, and it's fucking a perfect game for mobile.
Now, see, that's an interesting analysis, right? That's saying that Monopoly Go basically casualized social casino. Now that I would concur with. I think that is.
No, I think that's what we both are saying the same thing. Yes. I'm just trying to. I'm being
I think you are.
But what else does it mean, though? I think like that's the other piece, right? So, okay, it casualized slots. You know, what does that mean, though? What other takeaways can we take away from that? If there was this bajillion, $100 billion bill on the ground that Scopely picked up, what else is lying around?
Monopoly is an old brand. It's a very family-friendly brand. It's a very coveted brand. And
can I do my Jen voice?
You do.
Everyone do thinks Monopoly was made in their country. Did you know that? Did you know?
People that love that fact, Phil. It has 99 to 100% brand awareness, a higher brand awareness than Santa Claus.
That fact has like a crazy net promoter score. I'll say that.
but think about this. So you have this sort of you have this truly like iconic brand. And most of the companies, like you mentioned, like you take anything from Lego to Sonic to whatever you want to talk about, they would be probably totally against a game with what Kress called predatory monetization, like this type of a game, which is so aggressive. And yet this iconic brand went full in, allowed the game team to build the type of game that finds market success and is reaping all the success. Meanwhile, you go to any of these companies that own these big IPs, they will dictate to you what can you do and what you can't. Are you going to use gacha? Well, the gacha is not okay. Is there ad monetization? Well, goddamn no. Is there one bad review from any country that we can read in the comment section? If there is, we're gonna fucking throw a shitstorm your way. Like that's how most of the brands interact. But it seems like Hasbro, through their long relationship with Scopely, is so successful also because they are able to trust their partners to do the right decisions for this particular medium. And I think that's one of the key takeaways from this success case.
That is actually super insightful, right? So this is exactly why Rovio and Sega have failed miserably over and over and over and over again, because they will not embrace monetization. And that's why Blizzard continues to fail over and over and over again, except for Diablo Immortal, which was made by the Chinese, right? So it's like, yes, let's do predatory monetization. You want us to succeed at mobile? Fucking make games that make money, right? And that's the recipe, right?
Until you do that, it's one of many reasons. I think I've told the story before. I mean, I did the Hasbro business at EA. I was there for 5 years. I had to go when I was on Scrabble on mobile. We used to sell it for a premium $6.99. I had to go and pitch the CEO on taking it free to play. And he literally, it was Brian Goldner at the time, literally looked at me in the face and was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You want to put Scrabble for free?" And we said, "Hold on, let me tell you about ad monetization. And let me tell you about," and we actually didn't even do microtransactions in the original Scrabble. And they let us do it. So to Hasbro's credit, and by the way, there are Monopoly slot machines in Vegas for the last 10 or 15 years. So it is true with game brands that have been around for a long time. If you're an IP holder and you give flexibility to your partner, that is key. I also think there's a huge story around how they soft launched it and brought that game to market. That is a case study in perfection of really understanding how do you launch a game in today's world with the right KPIs in place. Like Supercell on Squadbusters should be calling up Hasbro and Scopely and being like, "Please walk me through what you did because we didn't do that on Squadbusters and we messed up."
The moral of the story is that everyone has to be like Hasbro and embrace the horror that is free to play mobile.
That is definitely not what I said, but
this goes to the transmedia point that is a whole other TED Talk, which is you have to let the people who are experts in that either segment or that genre or that industry do what's right for the brand, with their creative expertise. And I think that's why you get good transmedia when it's good. It's why you get good mobile games when they're, I know you're good. Okay, we're saying the same thing in that if people who get their hands on a brand are allowed to do what they do best, while still living within the guardrails of the brand, that is what a key to success.
I think I agree with everything except the last part.
I know.
Right? Fuck guardrails of the goddamn brand. Like, if you want to be successful on a fucking platform, find the people that know how to do the platform, embrace the horror, and get it done. Right? But if you're trying to like have some kind of like brand guidelines and stuff that you're going to fail miserably over and over and over and over again.
So, Ethan.
The section is biggest story since episode 200. I think that the biggest story as it relates to our audience is the long-term effects of the end of ZIRP, zero interest rate program, and the end of lockdown, and its combined effect on our industry and our employment situation and the funding for our industry. This is something Seifert hit on a lot, the end of ZIRP, and was one of my big takeaways as a listener and a host. But it's just, we had a extended and unprecedented period of time where 0% interest rates from the US central bank on treasuries, right? And that sets the benchmark for pretty much all interest rates for everything across the world. When interest rates are super low, when you can't make any meaningful returns on just sitting on your money in a bank account, it pushes institutional investors into riskier and riskier investment classes. Venture capital is one of those. And we had a period of time where games industry was a very hot investment category for VCs. Crypto, which overlaps with the games industry, was a very hot investment category. So we had years of just remarkable, groundbreaking amounts of investment into venture capital. And that then filtered down into a lot of the companies that we and our listeners work for or consult for. I mean, I'm on my 7th venture-backed startup. I've consulted for like 30 venture-backed startups. Like, most of the money that has gone to my bank account has been venture investment at the end of the day. And I think that's probably true for most people who listen, who are primarily working in the mobile space. And even, console or PC, there's a lot of venture investment around. That combined with lockdown creating record numbers of people indoor, record number of people needing to distract their children, just record amounts of revenue inside of the game industry from this global pandemic. It was a silver lining for our industry, at least. So these two things happening kind of at the same time, which is rising interest rates, a managed soft landing of the economy to prevent a giant crash like in 2008. There's been less investment in the games industry and less revenue in the games industry. And you combine these two forces and you're in the middle of this soft landing that we're in and looks like it'll persist for some number of months, if not years, which is studios closing by probably the hundreds at this point. People being laid off, positions closing, tens of thousands of layoffs over the past year and a half, 2 years. And we're not at the end of this, right? Microsoft just laid off 650 people last week. There was another studio closure last week. Like, we're not done, folks. Like, the video games industry has contracted and is continuing to contract. And many of those job losses will never come back. And many people who are getting laid off who have high skills and probably had inflated salaries during that period of enhanced investment are going to be taking pay cuts or going to be moving to fractional roles or consulting roles, because you have to recognize that the investment isn't what it was, the revenues aren't what they were, and that it impacts how we are employed and how many of us can be employed. So that, I think, is just the massive story for this Industry Insider podcast.
Very true.
I think the Microsoft story is very complicated, is part of the narrative for the last year or so, and it'll continue to be a theme that we talk about, unfortunately, because it's a very complicated story between big tech and gaming. There's lots of moving parts between Microsoft corporate, Xbox leadership, and all the studio orgs, including Blizzard and Activision, et cetera. They basically conceded the console wars, which has huge, deep issues and potential problems with the existing structure of the whole fucking console business. I think the story will continue and will have impact on the industry long term. They need to spin this thing out sooner rather than later before Microsoft kind of manages this thing in the ground. So
I think all the AI investment happened at the same time that AI took off, and Microsoft probably only cares about AI at this point, right? Like,
no, I know that is the big corporate problem.
Yeah.
Is like the gaming industry is no longer strategic for Microsoft, so therefore there's no reason to have this huge asset that's not making that much money for them.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be the biggest problem going forward.
The multiples are so down on gaming compared to almost any other one. Like we've seen multiples between 0.8 to 1. So that times revenue is the valuation of the company. So you kind of don't even want those assets, kind of bringing down rest of the business, which is SaaS, which is at a much higher multiples.
Do you think Sony increases prices then, which they've already done? I mean, their biggest competitor is out. Why wouldn't you raise the price across the board of stuff?
Well, you can go get a
$700
PS5 Pro if you'd like.
We're going to cover that next week. I just love the vitriol hate about a high-priced device for the core. It's really funny. All right.
Yeah, let's call it. This was super fun. Storytime was great. We'll pick up Storytime next week and finish a couple other things. Ethan, thank you for coming back and spending time with us. I know you're super busy.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a great mental break.
He's super busy,
I missed this,
and we
guys.
did the longest episode ever.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Ethan.
That's okay.
All right, everyone. See you next week.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry's best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand. Or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.